Hello everyone, welcome to the Dirty Rips channel, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm not going to be ripping open any packs today. Today I'm going to be talking specifically about grading companies. Now, there's been a lot of stuff going on online about like, oh, what company should I use, which one's the best, which one's the most cost effective, blah blah blah, which one's going to give me the most money, all this stuff. And a lot of people are kind of just looking at this and being like, why is everyone so, caught up in the money stuff? Well, clearly because of how big TCGs such as like Pokemon, such as like Dragon Ball, One Piece, all this stuff has gotten as popular as it has, well, now there's a lot more money to be made in it, and there's been a lot of the companies like PSA and all this stuff getting involved in it, and they're trying to obviously, raise the amount of profits they make. But that's neither here nor there. The only thing I'm going to talk about today is the grading companies. I'm going to go through everything. Now I have everything written down over here on my laptop, so bear with me on everything. So obviously the different grading companies that we have PSA, we have Beckett, we have CGC, we have TAG. Now, I've personally been struggling on which company I'm going to strictly go with. I've submitted to PSA a few times. I have never bought any slabs specifically from either card shows or anything like that. I've specifically just graded my own cards. I've graded 6 total, only of my Pokemon cards. I've got the Lugia from Call of Legends. I've got the Mew EX from the 151 promos, the Mewtwo from the 151 promos. I've got the base set Shadowless Mewtwo Unlimited. I have the Mew promo, the XY, and I have this Mew promo as well. These are the only cards that I have sent in for grading through PSA. I also have some Dragon Ball cards that are currently still waiting on those. I'm not expecting resale value or like trying to like flip those for a lot of money, because I just like those cards and I wanted to encase them and I wanted them to be in the best possible condition for the longest possible. So I'm going to go over the pros and cons when it comes to PSA. First, pros. Highest resale value. Now, obviously, if you've been to any type of card show or anything like that, you've seen a lot of vendors. They have, the raw cards and they have the slabs. Majority of the time, they strictly have PSA slabs. Why? Because everybody wants PSA slabs. Why? Personally, I don't know. Because to me, PSA is questionable, to say the least. Like I said, number 2, most recognized brand. It's the easiest to sell. Everybody knows PSA. Everybody submits to PSA. That's why, PSA is the gold standard. Why? Again, I don't know, because of how questionable they are. Number 3, huge population report database. They're easy to track stuff, whether it's like sales on eBay, stuff like that. Strong for both vintage and modern cards. I'm not so really sure about that. I mean, yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. Cons. That's what I really want to get to when it comes to PSA. More expensive than most of their competitors. Yes, they have raised their grading prices. I think originally they were like, $14, $15 per card to submit. And now they are $25 per card to submit. So you've raised it a whole $10 PSA per card. Thanks. Number 2, slower turnaround times. Yes, the turnaround times are absolutely horrid. The cards I currently have at PSA, I submitted them January 25th. It is now August 5th, or not, I'm sorry, not August, April 15th. and my cards are currently sitting in the research and ID status. They've been in the research and ID status for the past 2 weeks. Number 3, no subgrades. Yes, that is probably the biggest con when it comes to PSA, is the number 1, not knowing why your card got the grade that it got. You're literally just guessing as to why it got, say you thought you were going to get a 10 and it comes back an 8 or a 7. You literally have to sit there and play detective as to why your card got what it got. And you can like take it, to like a card show or something like that. Hey, can you tell me why this card got a 7? I don't see why. And you're gonna get a lot of inconsistent feedback. You're like, oh, it could be the surfacing. Oh, it could be the centering a little bit. Or it could be the back. Or it could be, oh, you got the little corners on the side. It could be anything. But without getting the actual data report from PSA, which they do not offer, you're literally just guessing, which is one of the reasons why I don't understand why PSA is the gold standard when it comes to grading, because it's like, you're making us guess, like you're doing some shady activity. Anyways, neither here nor there. All right. Well, and there's also, like I said, a lot of the controversy when it comes to PSA, because there have been a lot of horror stories that have come out. Some you may have seen, some you may not have seen. Probably the most infamous lately that I know of was the guy, he sent like 30 copies of one card. I think it was like a Pikachu Zekrom card that he had sent in for grading. He sent 30. Now, this guy was not expecting to get all of them 10s. He was like, maybe I'll get like 4 or 5, something like that. Get something out of it. Well, not a single one of his cards got 10s. They mostly all got 9s. And he was like, oh, well, that's too bad. And also, another shady activity that PSA does is their buyback program. So, PSA was like, hey, we'll give you this price for those PSA 9s. And the guy looked at it and he was like, well, it's going to be harder for me personally to sell 9s, so all right, I'll accept the buyback. And then, like a day or so later, he goes back and he checks the certs on those cards. Well, some of them have been changed from 9s to 10s. Shady. So he reaches out to PSA. He's like, hey, what's going on with this? You got my cards. You bought them off me. They were originally graded at 9s. You regraded them as 10s. What's going on here? He posted the story all over social media. And then, PSA got a lot of flack for it because, hey, that's like shady business practice. And I guess somewhere along the line, they compensated the guy. Either they gave him the cards back or they, gave him a fair price for the 10s or the cards that were 10s. Still, a company that does something like that is questionable, and like they tried to play it off as like, ooh, it was just an accident. We didn't know that was going on. Yes, you did. The second story that's most infamous when it comes to PSA is the guy who submitted a Deoxys card. And now this, mind you, this card was already originally graded through PSA as a 10, but it was an old slab. It was an old label, old cert. So he had submitted it through to PSA to get it reholdered. Now, if you don't know what reholdered means, basically just means they take it out of the old slab and they put it in a new one, same grade, everything like that, just new cert number, stuff like that. Well, lo and behold, this guy, his card gets damaged in the process. And then PSA decides to regrade the card. They knocked it down from a 10 to a 6. Now, clearly, the guy that submitted the card was furious about that, of course, because the card in a 10 was worth like $45,000. Anybody would be pissed about that. But, you know, it got damaged. Okay, shit happens. So he reached out to PSA. All right, what are you guys going to do with this? How are you going to compensate me for this? They offered him less than half of what the value of it was, which was, I think it was like $19,000. Excuse me? You're going to give me less than half of what the card's value is? No, absolutely not. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other horror stories when it comes to PSA. So like I said, I don't understand why it's the gold standard. Personally, I think there's better companies out there, but you know, I think the only reason that PSA is maintaining its current like #1 spot is because so many people, whether it's be vendors, influencers, anything like that, have so heavily invested in PSA slabs. So when anybody goes out online and talks negatively about PSA, they're like, oh, you're just mad because you didn't get any 10s. Oh, you know, they're the gold standard. Everybody likes PSA, blah, blah, blah. Why are you hating on PSA? Because they suck. Anyways, so now let's move on to Beckett. Now, me personally, I think I'm going to switch over to Beckett. I have never graded with them before. I have not heard any horror stories when it comes to them, but as far as like the good things when it comes to Beckett, I think it's kind of heavily leading me towards that. And of course, because not only do I do Pokemon, I do Dragon Ball. And when it comes to Dragon Ball stuff, Beckett is kind of like the go-to, specifically because of like subgrading and stuff like that. But yeah, the #1 pro when it comes to Beckett is the subgrading. You know, they go over centering, they go over corners, edges, surface, everything like that, and they give you a detailed report as to why your card got the grade that it gets. They're not going to just do what PSA does, which is just like, hey, you figure it out. No, they're like, all right, you got a 9 on the corners, you got a 10 on the centering, you got, you know, 10 on edges, and you got a 9 on the surfaces. So this is why you got a 9.5 when it comes to your overall grade. Okay, that's fair. Like, you told me why. And I can look at the report, I can look at the card, and I'm like, all right, you know what? This makes sense. Second thing, Black Label. Now, this is probably, I think, the best thing when it comes to Beckett because it draws in a lot more collectors to them. Now, if you don't know what the Black Label is, basically that is like literally the best grade that you can get. You can get a 10 with just the gold lettering with no Black Label. Still good, but you'll still have like, with the subgrades, you'll be like, oh, I got a 10 on the centering, I got a 10 on the surface, and I got a 10 on the corners, but I got a 9.5 on the edges. I still got a 10, but it's not perfect. Black Label is literally perfect. Everything's a 10. Centering, corners, edges, surface, every single thing. And that is the most sought after grade when it comes to Beckett, because there's a lot more resale value when it comes to it. #3, strong for modern cards and high-end pulls. So obviously, if you got really high-end stuff, it's going to work out for you. Not always, because when it comes to the grades itself, but also when it comes to pricing. Now, unlike PSA, you're not going to have to deal with upcharging. That was one other thing I forgot when it comes to PSA, is if you submit a card that's worth $100 raw, but you get it in a 10 when it comes back from PSA, and now that card's worth like $6,000-$7,000 roughly. Guess what? PSA is now going to charge you an upcharge. Why? Because you got a good grade. And they try to dress it up, be like, oh, it's for insurance reasons, in case the card gets damaged, blah, 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 blah. But you have seen the way that PSA handles people that get their cards damaged. So what good is it really doing if when the cars are getting damaged, you're still doing crappy on that end. So I think me personally, I think it's just a way for them to steal more money from you. Number 4, stricter grading than PSA. Now, obviously that might, to some people, see like, oh, that's more of a con. It's going to be harder for me to get a 10. Well, I think it's better personally because, with stricter grading, that means that they're actually looking at the card more, they're looking at it in better detail, and they're taking their time, and they're trying to make sure that you get the most accurate and best grade when it comes to things. All right, now we're going to move on to the cons. Number 1, it says lower resale value than PSA in most cases. And to an extent, that is true, but I think with a lot of the things that I've seen when it comes to online, a lot more people are kind of turning to Beckett because of the things that have been happening with PSA. So I think, yes, right now the resale value is lower than PSA, but I think it's slowly starting to go up. And, if you have something that's graded, whether it's like vintage or like a top chase and a set, then yeah, that's going to be easier for you to sell and may not be exactly at PSA price, but it could be somewhat close to it, or sometimes even more if it gets a black label. People say longer turnaround times. Yeah, they do have a little bit long when it comes to turnaround times, but personally, I would rather deal with the turnaround times and getting the detailed reports on the grading versus just having to guess why I got the grade that I got. This is I wouldn't necessarily, than the number 4 saying as a con, bigger slabs, saying that, oh, some people don't like that it's bigger slabs, it's like more sleek than this. I mean, yeah, it's more sleek and it's not as big or clunky, I guess, but like, what does it matter? Like, the size of it, it's graded, you got a 10, why would the size of it matter? It makes no sense to me. I'm a simple person when it comes to this stuff. Like, I'm just trying to get my card and get the best grade that I can. All right, now we're going to be moving on to CGC. Now, CGC to me right now is kind of like bottom of the barrel when it comes to grading, because I've been to many card shows. I've seen a lot of videos online. I've never seen somebody sell a CGC slab. Like, maybe once or twice online with like higher end stuff, but CGC stuff is like, unless it's a 10, unless it's like a very sought after card, you're going to be holding on to that for a while. And I've seen pretty much a lot of vendors just giving away CGC slabs of stuff. Now, some of the time it's just random cards that they've gotten from those mystery packs and stuff like that they're just trying to get rid of because they don't want it in their inventory, which I get. But at the same time, it's like CGC, yeah, they have a lot of pros. They're the cheapest when it comes to grading your cards. They have a lot faster turnaround times, but I see that kind of more as a con, really, because if they're having faster turnaround times, it's because not a lot of people are submitting with them. But they also do have optional for you to do subgrading, so kind of similar to what Beckett does. Yeah, and like I said, the cons, with the lowest resale value when it comes to PSA and Beckett. So, me personally, I don't really see CGC making a comeback anytime soon. They could surprise me, I don't know, but I think unless they change the design when it comes to their slabs and their labels inside the slabs, nobody's gonna really want them, because like the blue label on it is kind of like, it's bland, it's not really popping and like drawing people into it. So CDC is kind of a, in my opinion. And last one I'm going to talk about is Tag. Now, I don't have anything against Tag, like nothing whatsoever, but I do have concerns itself. Now, when it comes to Tag, they are growing in popularity, which I give them kudos in that. And Tag, if you don't know what Tag is a specifically AI grading company. So there's no human interaction when it comes to grading your card. They're using AI only to check the centering, check the corners, all that stuff. Which, in theory, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. We're going to program a computer to use these types of grading standards, and they're going to grade cards from now on. It makes sense on paper, but the thing is like, even computers make mistakes, especially with someone as new as Tag. There's going to be mistakes made. Like, they're going to miss things. Like, what happens if, like, say, oh, the program is like messed up one day and it's not recognizing certain things, and then a whole bunch of people get like Tag 5s or 6s when they should have gotten 9s or 10s. Like that, I know they probably have a lot of people on it to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen, but yeah, it's a concern when it comes to me. Another thing is resale value. Tag is still fairly new. It's really hard to sell Tag stuff because of how new it is, and not a lot of people are as heavily invested into it like Beckett and or PSA. So you're going to have a little bit of harder time as far as resale value, or even trying to sell it in general, like, unless it's a very sought after card like the Bubble Mew from Paldean Fates, or it's the freaking Mewtwo from Destined Rivals or something like that. And unless you have that and a 10 and a Tag, you're going to be holding on to that card for quite a while. And the final thing when it comes to Tag is the slabs themselves. A lot of people I've seen, whether it be online or in person or in card shows and stuff like that, is the reason why they're not drawn towards Tag is because of how easily breakable the slabs are. And I've held some Tag slabs in my hand. I haven't broke them personally, but I've grabbed a random one that someone gave to me that had a card in it that was not worth anything, so he was like, here, go ahead, test it out. And I like barely even bended down, and I could tell that the card was, or the slab itself was on the brink of breaking. So I was like, all right, yeah, that's kind of a problem that they're gonna have to fix. One thing that I think would be a good idea for Tag to bring more people into this stuff, because like I said, I have nothing against them. I think they have a lot of potential, and I think that they're gonna be a strong competitor when it comes to PSA somewhere down the line. But the one thing that I think they need to do is they kind of need to take a page out of Beckett's book with like the black labels and stuff. I think what they need to do is they need to do with cards that are perfect, centering, corners, everything like that, they need to make a gold label, or they can do like a gold trim around the outside edges of the slabs and give it some kind of name, being like gold standard or something like that. And I think that would kind of draw more people in, because like, hey, I got a gold standard Tag right here, who wants it, whatever price it goes to on eBay. But yeah, those are the different grading companies that are out there. Those are the pros and cons. Like I said, I'm starting to lean more towards Beckett. I haven't graded with them yet, but once I get a little bit of money for my next submission, I'm going to go ahead and submit to Beckett and see exactly what my experience is going to be with that. I will upload a video as far as the process of how to get it done and how long it takes and what the end result is on the cards and what the grades that I get with them. But I appreciate y'all stopping in today, listening to me rant on about this stuff, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Peace.